And I remember this big short position you had.
Yep.
And I remember it ended up being one of the biggest losses I've ever seen. And honestly, when I was, naive, I thought it was a fake loss. It was around $500,000. For a lot of people, that's not a big, that's a huge number. And, they can't really fathom that, especially making that. Now imagine losing that, right? So I wanted to really just ask, how was it, building up that position? Because over time, you probably built that position up. And how did you have a chance to get out? Did you have a chance to, get out for profit? What really led you, and what were the mistakes, or if there was any mistakes that you made when it came to that $500,000 loss?
So I remember this very vividly. This was 2020, beginning of 2020. I just moved to Miami. A lot of things were happening in my life at the point. I also just had my first $1 million month in February. So I start off, I forgot what January was, but February was my first $1 million month. I ended up making $1 million on trading that month. Going into March, I now carry over this, huge month. Oh man, I made $1 million this month. And now once I had that $1 million month, I start targeting trying to make 10 million for the year. Mm-hmm. So those two things start anchoring my whole trading. Hey, I want to make 10 million. I just had $1 million. How do I go and make this X amount? So now mentally I start looking for different opportunities. So I was shorting SPY at the time, almost every day on the open, just hammering the short, because, the whole Corona stuff was going on. And then at one point I was like, you know what? I think it's going to go lower. So I was able to kind of convince myself that that position was right and it's going to go a lot lower. So I ended up adding more and more and more. And the crazy part is my first position, I didn't go in with the full 500. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like 150K, another 100, another 100. And next thing you know, my cost base is around 500 something, like 510 it was exact. And even with how much I was up at a point, because I was up on the position at a point, I lost maybe with unrealized gains and stuff, maybe like 900. Mm-hmm. That wasn't my money, but 510 on a cost basis. And ultimately it was because, I was biased, right? And the market did, in my opinion, at that moment look good for a short. But when the Fed stepped in, right, I wasn't able to grasp the whole concept and realize what was actually happening in the market. And when I got confused at the exact moment, and I should have taken a step to the side and maybe took off half or maybe closed my position and taken a 30-40% loss, I was like, no, I'm right. I have to be right. And also I think there's a social pressure that comes with it, where once you put something out on social media and people are like, oh no, you're going to be wrong, you go, screw it, let me add more. Mm-hmm. No, I'm going to double down on my position, right? So it's the same thing as when you get into an argument with someone, and even if you're wrong, you're like, shit, I look stupid. Yeah. I can't look wrong, so you double down on it. Mm-hmm. So essentially that loss happened. Weirdly, I'll say it's kind of like the best thing that happened for my trading career, if you want to call it, because it kind of helped me dig deeper into myself, learning about myself, learning, my red flags mentally, my barriers that, messed me up as a trader. And that ultimately allowed me to have my biggest year the year after, mm-hmm. right? So in a way, it was a good thing looking back at it now. But if I never had a good year after, it would have still been like the worst thing.